Welcome to this fabulous spring day at the Fed with MITX and for our mobile summit. This is our first mobile marketing and advertising summit that we've done, and I am blown away by how it's come together. What an incredible lineup we have for you today. You guys are really in for a treat today. It's going to be jam-packed, fast-moving, lots to do, lots to learn, and lots to inspire you by.
So we heard your title. I think it'd probably be great if you just kind of quickly tell us a little bit of what you do at the Weather Channel.
Sure. So, well, thanks very much for having me, first of all. So if you can't understand me, yell out or something. My accent can be a little bit weird at times. So the Weather Company is really a amalgamation of three consumer brands. So there's the Weather Channel, which you probably all know. There's Weather Underground, which some of you may or may not know. And then there's a site in Telecast. And they're sort of focused on three different parts of the three different audiences. So Weather Underground is sort of your geekiest, data-hungry audience. It's the person in every circle that's sort of the, you say something and they like one-up you. As that guy is sort of your Weather Underground consumer. The Weather Channel is sort of the middle of your bell-shaped curve. And then in Telecast is sort of going after the niche, we call them prosumers, but it's really two big segments is marine and aviation consumers. And so everything digital within the company reports into my team. And we put apps in everything from fridges to airplanes to telephones to mobile phones to cars, you name it. Everybody wants an app with the weather on it somewhere.
Cool. So the channel, or the channel itself, I think is what, 30 years old or so. And I remember as a kid, kind of at that station, like, wow, there's the weather, and you kind of flip by and you're like, that's great. You guys have come a long, long way in terms, especially in digital, and been a really early adopter in terms of mobile, post PC world. Can you talk a little bit about how that evolution's happened in the last few years at a high level?
Sure. So I think it comes back to our strategy of investing early in new platforms. And in many ways, sometimes that's considered too early from a purely financial point of view. But just to give you a sense of how early we invest in these platforms, we bought the URL weather.com for $8.95. Right, we bought it very early, like when the market opened for URLs. We were the first app to launch on iPhone. We were the first app, to launch on Android and on iPad and on Kindle, and the list just goes on and on and on. And so Google TV, you sort of name it. And so we're always trying to be in the places that matter. We don't always get that right, but it's a little bit like the venture capital game from a strategy point of view. We want to be right at the very beginning. We want to be learning and be early, but we also want to fail quickly. So if the platform doesn't materialize, there's a bunch of fridges out there with apps in them that are in a warehouse somewhere, and sort of shut down that part of the business.
Did management recognize the importance of that early on? Because a lot of people still struggle. I mean, I have clients today who still don't have don't have apps. You know what I mean? I think it's amazing to see how early you guys got into that game. And was it hard for you to sell it in? What was it that kind of was the impetus for that?
Yeah, it was really hard. We actually started doing mobile in 1999. We launched our first mobile website at the Weather Channel. We shut that down in 2000 because no one was using it. We then launched with Verizon a paid subscription application that was relatively successful, and that's sort of, we had like half a person working on sort of mobile in 2001, and then we really didn't do very much in mobile at all after that. We just sort of sat as the market matured. Like many stories about mobile, sort of the iPhone comes out and sort of recalibrates everybody's thinking. But even then, we had a very big TV business, 100 million households, very well penetrated, making a lot of money. And me, wanted to invest a whole lot of money in building a mobile group and sort of investing, getting over our skis from a financial point of view in this mobile platform. And it was really hard. We were privately owned. A single person owned us at the time, and so we had to build a business case, and it didn't go very well. We got turned down 3 or 4 times on the business case, and eventually we just self-funded it out of mobile advertising. So we had a few advertisers that sort of joined us very, very early on. Bank of America, Toyota were really early adopters sort of in the mobile ad space, and they sort of funded our whole program. Then Android launched, and all of a sudden, we looked up and we had like 10 million users using, mobile. And all of a sudden we started doing some math and realized that we had more people using our mobile apps on a minute-by-minute basis than were watching us on TV. And so like very, very early on, this is like 2009, we realized that consumer behavior had already changed. That was like really early that we were sort of getting these like early sort of leading indicators of behavior change. And so we've just been very data-centric in our approach to this. But it's always been, for us, about trying to own a habit. That's become really trendy lately with a bunch of books about habits. But when you're in what many people consider a utility space, the only thing that you can really try to invest in to own is the habit of that utility. And that's really what we've done at the Weather Company and at the Weather Channel. Our products don't necessarily look that great. That's a big sort of area for improvement for us. But the actual habit, the usage that we get is insane. So to give you a sense of how that manifests itself, we have on average, we have over 100 million users a month in mobile. And on average, they visit us 34 times a month. So that's the average. So that's more than once a day. On average, they visit us. So if you back out of that a little bit, that means about 20% of people visit 60 times a day, right? So like it's high frequency, habitual consumption. The only other app that's sort of like us is Facebook in that way. It's sort of become this like sort of endorphin hit to like, go to Facebook and see whatever. Is similar with the weather.
So in terms of user behavior, can you talk a little bit about what you see in the difference between people watching the channel using mobile app or even tablet, and even if you can get into iOS versus Droid? Like, do you see dramatic differences? Obviously, mobile is going to be different from television, but what are the big differences? Are people obviously don't watch television in that way, so what's the difference in that user behavior and how you guys are responding to it?
Yeah, so user behavior is really pretty interesting, and it's evolved a lot. But the Weather Channel on TV has always been about how you start your day. Like that's sort of our prime time on TV is, sort of you wake up, you turn on the Weather Channel, then you get dressed, or you grab a cup of coffee, depends on who you are. And then, you start your day. It's the same in mobile and online. People start their day with the Weather Company. And so 25% of all Americans digitally start their day with the Weather Company. They also end their day with the Weather Company. So the only property that does that more than us is Facebook, which is 30%. So 30% of people start their day and end their day on Facebook. 25% start their day or end their day on the Weather Company. To give you a sense of like where like a Google is like 6%, right? So it's a huge number of people are starting their day and ending their day. The very first thing they do and the very last thing they do is check their weather. So that's sort of logical when it's explained, but is a very unusual behavior for a media property. But there's a big difference between smartphones consumption and tablet consumption. So smartphones basically at about 5 in the morning sort of light up. They'll light up and sort of reach a plateau at about 9. They'll sort of be fairly steady through about 2 o'clock. They'll dip down between sort of 2 and 5. They pick back up at a big spike between sort of 5 and 7. They just like sort of collapse at 7 o'clock. And and then they spike again at about 10 and turn off again at about 11:30. The difference with tablets is, for us at least, is tablets, spike between sort of 9 and 11. They sort of flatten off for the rest of the day, and then as soon as basically people get home, they spike again till 11 o'clock. The biggest spike in the day is in the evening from like 7 till 11, and then again on weekends. So it really is, for us at least, it's a sort of at-home experience, whereas smartphones sort of blanket through sort of the at-work experience. We've just seen Android overtake iOS in consumption. That happened about 4 or 5 months ago for us, sort of the tipping point. But we were adding about 110,000 new users a day, and about 65,000 of those are Android customers every day. So it's more than basically one a second, something like that.
So you guys have had paid apps in the past. Obviously, your free app now. Model almost strictly advertising. Has that been kind of the focus?
Yeah, we're very sort of media centric to the mix. We're actually going to dabble in the future more in the sort of the freemium, so you can sort of in-app purchases and things like that. But we're definitely a media supported model. At the scale and distribution we have, sort of unparalleled. And so very few places you can go and buy an audience of this scale. And the unique thing about our company is we're the only place you can come and buy the kind of scale we have on all sort of 3 or 4 screens. So we have 100 million people on TV, 100 million unique visitors a month on weather.com and our websites, another 100 million users every month on our mobile applications. So it's like, that kind of scale is really, really unusual, and being able to move audiences between those screens as their usage and behavior changes throughout the day is like a really big deal. So
you've seen usage obviously explode like a lot of other folks, but have the dollars followed? And I can say, being on my end, I know that mobile dollars are moving faster than probably even a lot of the research companies are reporting on it. I'm curious what you guys are seeing in terms of, dollars moving from, other places into mobile.
So we've been very, very fortunate by being early to mobile to have, had a lot of success in mobile advertising. And so I have to be a little careful. We're a privately owned company, but to give you a sense of where we are. So if we were like a mobile ad network, and there's all these reports that all the companies spit out about mobile ad networks, we'd be the 5th largest mobile ad network in the US. And so, that's between, sort of 80 million and 110 million in sort of mobile only ad revenues. We're sort of right in the middle of that sort of range. So it's a big business. The most exciting part, though, is that business is growing at 100% top line revenue a year. So our growth in mobile monetization is like extraordinary, and we're not, we're starting to run into the law of big numbers, but we're still seeing 80-90% growth in Q1 and projected out into Q2. So we're really, really excited about the potential. I think we're also seeing, though, is this I call it hesitancy in the marketplace, where, and I think it's what why many of you are potentially here today, where you should be, but you're not, and because my own experience has been this way too, where I would spend money on TV when I was at Pfizer, and we would see the dollars, the sales come into the our coffers pretty much within a few hours of the TV spot airing, and so we just kept doing it, and we kept doing it and kept doing it, and people get habituated in the things that work, and so trying to change things that have worked is really, really hard. But your audience has changed. Their habits have changed. Their consumption has changed dramatically. So today, on average in America, people are spending more time on their mobile phone every day than they do watching TV. So if you're spending, less than 7% of your budget on mobile, like, you're doing it wrong. Like you just are. Like you're doing a disservice to your clients just based on the audience and behavior patterns. It doesn't matter what vertical you're in or what sort of market you're in. If you're not spending about 7% of your budgets on mobile, you're just doing it wrong. And so you need to give your agencies, you need to give yourselves sort of a sort of introspective look at like how you're spending your money and why you're spending it the way you are, because things have changed, and you got to catch up.
Yeah, I have a lot of clients. We go to say we want to do mobile. They say, "Oh, that's cool. It's growing. It's big." And then they say, "But my ad's going to be this big." And we say, "Okay, well, you're kind of missing the point in terms of the opportunity we have here." I'm curious, what have you guys done to help increase that revenue in terms of advertising opportunities, so it's it becomes a an attractive thing for agencies and brand advertisers?
Yeah, I think the creative formats in mobile are a challenge, and so I didn't say this was easy, but I think they're definitely a challenge. We've done a number of things. A number of companies have done a number of things. There's mobile-rich media now. There's out-of-banner experiences. There's so many ways you can have a really integrated campaign that's very brand-centric, that gives you a lot of real estate to play with. We just launched, I'll use one of our examples, but we've launched what we call branded backgrounds. So essentially you basically have to give us 40 different sets of creative for each of the weather conditions that we have. And basically we use those as the backgrounds in our application. And you can basically, they weather trigger around all the different weather conditions that play out. But it gives you the whole screen essentially as a click footprint for your creative. It's also a big branding palette. It's the full screen. It's as big as the screen can be. And so for those that want to brand and use mobile as a branding mechanism and have a deeper, richer palette, they can do that. I think the other big thing, which you probably all see and do yourselves, but may not be yet connecting to your media habits, is video. So video is huge and growing explosively on mobile. And so as devices are getting faster, networks are getting faster, the difference between the iPhone 4S and the iPhone 5 with no content change was a 25% increase in video consumption. So just exactly the same content, faster processor and a faster network meant a 25% increase in video consumption. So, it's another huge area. If you've got a lot of money invested in video content or in video advertising, there's huge opportunities in mobile to sort of monetize there as well.
So data is obviously a hot subject, and for good reason. You guys must have some just amazing data, and I'm curious how you're able to use that data and leverage it, and what you're doing from a revenue opportunity there.
So data at times overwhelms us at the weather company. We have such large audiences, all generating huge amounts of data. We're actually in a process of investing close to $50 million completely redoing our data warehousing infrastructure just to keep sort of up with the growth, and that's to put it in the cloud, right? So like we're just investing $50 million to set up our infrastructure to put all of our data into the cloud. So it's sort of the peripheral infrastructure versus the way we used to do it. We would have had to spend probably $300 or $400 million on infrastructure to not have it in the cloud. So this just gives you a sense of scale. The easiest way to talk about data for us, because it's so big, is to try and do it on a daily basis. So our smallest property in the portfolio is IntelliCast. Generates 1 billion pieces of data a second about user behavior, weather conditions, everything else. And so that's like our smallest property. Weather.com generates anywhere from 15 to 20 billion pieces of data a second on all kinds of things that are going on, behavior patterns, weather events, things like that. So we have this just incredible set of data, but probably the data that we're sort of anchoring ourselves around is location. That's the sort of the cornerstone piece of data for us. We think about location. The way we talk about internally in my team is location is the new cookie. It's the prized piece of data that we want about you. And there's all kinds of ways people are using data. I'll sort of ask rhetorical questions because none of you will ask them, but I talk to people fairly often, and I say, I won't make you do it, but I say, everybody stand up, introduce yourself to the person next to you, and ask them how much they make. Right? Like, no one's going to answer that question. Then I say, tell the person next to you the last 3 things you bought online, regardless of what they were. Like, no one wants to say that either. But that's what third-party data is, right? Then the next question I ask is like, tell them what the weather is. Like, they're totally happy. They're relieved to talk about the weather. And so that's sort of how we sort of play and think about data in the world, and think about privacy, and all the things that are going on. I think the amount of data that's flowing around, and those questions, you can tie those questions to big brands, right? So you think about Amazon and your purchasing behavior. You think about Apple and iTunes, or Google and Google Play Store. The data they have about what you're doing, how you're consuming, is pretty interesting. The data we have is all about the weather. It is really important, but it's 100% location aware. You have to tell us where you are, and that's sort of the key to the whole thing. So we're the second biggest location services company in the world, is the other way we sort of characterize ourselves behind Google. And so that's sort of the key data that we're interested in.
What do you see in terms of the biggest challenges in the mobile space moving forward in the next year or two?
I think the biggest challenges are really marketers and agencies and the ecosystem providing, making mobile easy is what we need to do as an industry. We need to do that for marketers. We need to do that for agencies. We need to get enough sort of equity in each part of the food chain for people to make money. Because today, whether it's myself or you'll hear from Michael from ESPN later, we're big publishers, huge scale, making really good money in the system. But there's ad networks, the biggest ones are doing the same. They're doing pretty well. The biggest ad agencies are doing the same. They're doing, okay. But mobile's really, really hard. Like when I go talk to, CEOs of the holding companies, they have whole agencies within their portfolios that they just will not let buy mobile because they can't make any money on it today. The ecosystem is not set up. It's too hard to buy. It's too hard to traffic. When the clients force them to do it, the agency in the middle loses money on the transaction because the amount of manual time and effort it takes to make that happen. And so the friction in the market is probably the single biggest challenge I think we have. But then I think the other really big challenge we have is just fear. People are afraid of change. And I think we're at this place where fear is becoming sort of disabling for some agencies and clients. And the thing I hate to tell them is, like, if they don't step up, if they don't start spending and testing and doing this, consumers will change their brand preference in a heartbeat. Like, it's just proven again and again. You're going to get disrupted. The audience has already moved, and so you've got to move with them. So don't be afraid.
Which brands and advertisers are doing it well, and why, in your mind?
That's a loaded question. What's the name of an advertiser in the room that spends money with us? So I think Dunkin' Donuts, local Boston company, is doing a pretty good job on mobile. They're very plugged into location, moving people through into the retail, foot traffic environment from mobile. I think Bank of America has done a good job. Toyota, surprisingly, has done a really good job in the automotive space. I'm trying to think. Those are probably some of the better of the big ones, all the really sexy, cool stuff is mostly being done by smaller brands. Coca-Cola's done a lot of one-off interesting things, but I love my friends at Coca-Cola, so don't tweet this. But like on the big picture view, they're really bad at it. And they'll say that themselves. They spend billions of dollars a year globally on marketing. They spend a couple of $100 million in mobile advertising, and it works incredibly well for them. But they're still not shifting sort of to that sort of 7% spend amount that they should be. And if they did, it would be just transformational for the industry.
Cool. This is my last question. I'm going to turn over to a lot of smart people in the room that have better questions than me. But what's next for you guys? Where are you going to go next in terms of mobile and in the post-PC world?
I have no idea. No. So I think we are going to a place where we're probably going to look at putting up registration walls, which sounds really bad, but is not going to be bad for consumers. We're not going paid. We're just going to a place where we want to be able to move people between screens seamlessly and carry their preferences with them. So if you think about that for weather, it comes back to location. As you move from your iPhone into your living room, local on the 8s on TV sort of is a concept that's probably going to go away, and your mobile phone will generate, sync up with your television, tell it what location preferences you have, whether it's your grandma's house or your lake house or your beach house or your office, and it'll all just seamlessly travel across on a ticker on your TV screen. That's all managed out of your phone or your tablet experiences. And then it's sort of a form of passive personalization. People don't like to personalize. They all say they do in the surveys, but they don't actually do it. And so we will passively personalize their experiences between screens.
All right, I'm going to turn over to you guys. Questions?
So you mentioned two things which I think are key to unlocking billions and billions of dollars. One is better ad units. And by ad unit, I mean it very broadly. So the shift to video would be kind of an incremental thing. But, these kind of closed loop marketing ad units where you can get driven to a Dunkin' Donuts with a coupon. And the other one is data, right? Which is just knowing how to segment your audience better. You have a monster audience. If you had to, I don't know, do you have kids? If you had to put your kid's entire college tuition on a pure play bet on one versus the other in terms of unlocking the next $10 billion, which one would it be?
Data. The answer is really easy.
So you don't think that it's...
I put all my money on data. All in on data.
Okay. So and not on ad units, like these video rolls that take... Okay.
I mean, they're going to be cool, and we need them. But like the diaspora difference between the two from a financial return in 10 years... data is going to absolutely crush everything else. Like, I don't know if any of you guys read the Journal of the Times lately about Google Glass, right? Like, if you think about a future state with Minority Report movie or whatever it is, like whatever your vision of the future is going to be in 15 years' time, all the things that are enabled in these movies are all enabled because of the data that's transacting, behind the scenes to like know what you want, know that you're interested in XYZ car, so XYZ car ad shows up on the billboard as you walk past it. All these tools, Google Glass, etc., are just huge data collection vacuums. Apps are exactly the same. We just aren't thinking about them that way today. And then, being able to digest that data, turn that into insights that are valuable is really, I think, where the big money is going to be made. Some of the companies that are doing incredible jobs in that already aren't necessarily glamorous, but many of you have heard of them, see them all the time. They're probably some of the disdain of your lives, like an Experian as an ad agency does a lot of Lower My Bills ads that we run, many publishers run. They're probably the most sophisticated advertiser, one of the most sophisticated advertisers in the US right now. The amount of data that they're pulling in to target exactly what creative works. We don't like the creative. We don't like the way it looks. But the way it works is all data centric and is incredible.
Hey, so cross-channel targeting and attribution is probably one of the hardest things that we do. I work at DataZoo right now and represent a lot of brands on the buy side. Would you consider taking that registration data that you're going to encourage users to use to assist in that for the brands that we represent and other buyers?
So we will assist ourselves in that for sure. I think, it's early days in the data world, and I think initially we're going to take a very conservative approach to sharing data with others. We will share data that's generated by our advertisers through their actual advertising. We won't share data about user behaviors other than in the aggregate. And between screens is sort of our secret sauce, if you like. And so I think we're going to be very conservative there. I think the other thing that, to your question earlier about things that make me nervous, probably the thing that makes me the most nervous about mobile that is potentially the largest risk if I was filling out, so any kind of public offering form, the first thing on that list would be regulation, because I think we're gonna scare people much more quickly than they've ever been scared before, and that basically equals regulation unless we do a really, really good job. So for all of those of you who are in the mobile industry in any way, you have to be really careful. And you have to self-police. And if you see people that you know doing things they shouldn't be doing, you need to help stop it because it will undermine everything about this ecosystem. But we should chat. Happy to talk about it.
Hey, Cameron, Adam Tovum at JumpTap. Cameron, you and I were actually just talking earlier about the need for getting things right around self-regulation, around making sure the privacy is in place to protect a lot of that user data. Do you see that user data is key? You mentioned both cross-screen, then you also mentioned, it sounds like there's a great opportunity for you guys to reach people even not just at the beginning and end of the day, but sort of throughout the day on multiple screens. Do you see that data as being key to that? And do you see any advantage to, while still protecting your own data, finding those folks elsewhere off of your owned and operated properties, a form of audience extension?
Yeah, we do think finding our audiences where they are is really important. I don't think we're not looking to become sort of a network, if you like, a distributed network per se. We think about ourselves really as sort of owned and operated properties. Having said that, we distribute our content in a very free and open way. So we have APIs and SDKs available to put weather. Any one of you that wants weather, we have a web page you can go to, it's weather.com/API, and you can download our APIs, and put your weather in sites. And we do collect, data from those sites, but we're not yet today trying to build a distributed network. I think we may look at that, but there's lots of hurdles for us sort of around that. So we'll see how it plays out.
Time for one more question. Anyone else? All right, you nailed it. Great. Well, thank you, Cameron. Thanks to all of you.
Thanks, Ron.